So I apologize in advance. I am fighting a little bit of a cold, and so will be coughing throughout. I'm Eric Tucker, the Executive Director and co-founder of Brooklyn Laboratory Charter Schools, and we are a cluster or a network of schools in the tech triangle. So think of the triangle between the Navy Yards, the Barclay Center, and Dumbo there. Most of the founding team is ultimately raising our own children in that neighborhood as well. And so the kind of North Star or the genesis for Brooklyn Lab is also the question kind of what community do we want to live in and what type of school would we be committed to building for our own children. We're a school of complex learners, and so one data point is that 64% of our students are in the highest kind of service category, or 60 plus percent of the instructional minutes of the week are receiving services. We have in our early years, we're kind of just wrapping up year 3. We've achieved breakthrough results. So this is the Charter School Growth Fund portfolio, so the highest performing charter networks around the country on NWA MAP. Think of 80% of our students as meeting their annual goals, and then the kind of amount of growth is roughly kind of 3.8 years of growth in mathematics and 2.8, depending on the year in reading. So the question is kind of what is it that allows a kind of ragtag group of educators to try to meet the needs of the very highest students, of the lowest students, of the students who are in between? And we've kind of, we think there's a lot that matters, but ultimately at the core is strength-based work or positive youth development work that's focused on unlocking the potential of our scholars. One, a mastery or a competency-based approach that looks at what types of dispositions will matter most in adult life, and what are the ways that our scholars can become generators of evidence that they're increasingly able to do those things. And 3, how do we personalize or kind of tailor learning experiences to meet the needs of scholars? Cortex, a next generation learning platform, is in effect the technical manifestation of those design constraints, or is the kind of tool that we use to kind of approach our 4 big drivers of academic success. So human capital matters tremendously, and we play adults in a range of positions. We talk a lot about an educational orchestra, or the idea that percussion, brass, woodwinds, strings, aren't kind of best played in the same position, but we ultimately are committed to building a school that kind of excellent educators are able to play in a position that works best for them, and that all adults are playing together in a way that unlocks the potential of scholars. Mastery, we kind of tend to focus on what are the standards, what are the competencies that matter. We, as a school, privilege quality and privilege engagement tremendously. So we think that reading stuff that's really complex, that's high quality, matters, but matters most within a context of a signature experience. So if you think of kind of 30 years after graduating from high school, what are the things that you'll actually remember about the million minutes that you spent in K-12, right? Those are the kinds of signature experiences that we should be designing most of our school days and weeks against. We think that ultimately data matters tremendously as a kind of driver to unlock the potential of young people. You see a screenshot here of Cortex, and ultimately students being owners of data matters to empower them to achieve the kinds of mastery that will set them up for or for success in adult life. So there's a lot of different definitions of personalization. We ultimately believe that young people developing deep connections to each other and to adults matters tremendously. That, yes, we do a lot of blended or a lot of kind of personalized trajectories that are mastery based, and we use kind of open education resources or free and publicly available designed learning experiences that we ingest through Cortex UX and deploy, but that ultimately personalization for us, very much like the school we just heard from, Carmen, is ultimately a kind of practice that needs to leverage the best of the special education tradition. So we both believe that kind of the digital piece of personalization should be happening within the context of a multi-tiered system of support, but also kind of critically that the special education tradition brings things to the table as we design personalized learning systems, and to kind of name a few. The tradition of self-advocacy is critical. So the idea that young people know who they are as learners, know what types of accommodations would make a difference for them, and are well equipped to make the case for what kind of learning experience they need is absolutely critical. We also believe that executive functioning, or the degree to which young people can increasingly become managers of their own learning, is critical both within the special education tradition and critical to kind of unlocking the potential of young people in a system of personalization. Youth development has a range of components, but I'm kind of pulling out a few here. One is we've been blessed to benefit from exchanges and professional conversations with Alpha Public Schools in San Jose. The physical activity based positive youth development work that they do has helped us understand the broader work of personalization with a new lens. And so think of it as, we use language like this sixth grader needs to manage their own learning along a personalized and personalize the pace and personalize the kind of trajectory in a progression that, of kind of middle school standards of blah, blah, blah. Most middle schoolers will glaze over. It just makes no sense. And so if you're kind of starting with a team-based physical activity, a kind of reductionist view would be, Erin is doing 25 push-ups at the beginning of the term, and she should be doing 40 by the end of the term. I'm doing 3, and so I should aim to be doing 10, but we're holding each other accountable for progress, and we're developing together. That kind of strength-based approach, but also kind of tailored to meet the needs of a particular student, is at the core of the personalized leadership training program. We think learner goals matter tremendously, and that the idea that there needs to be a broader and deeper kind of set of aspirations that we're aiming towards, is kind of central to, our premise. So I'm trying to think what to share in the next minute. This piece is key. I kind of spoke about executive functioning. One of the things about Cortex is that it integrates with Google Calendar. It integrates with the rest of the Google suite. And so as a teacher, as I kind of assign a deadline within a project, the student has that show up both on their agenda page and their kind of goal setting page, but also it shows up in their calendar, et cetera. So, a big piece of the transition, as we heard from Da Vinci, the transition from high school to adult life is being able to do purpose-driven work, being able to understand your role on a multifunctional team, and then manage yourself as a learner, and manage yourself as a contributor to a team. And we kind of have looked at those aspirations, then tried to figure out what type of agenda page, what kinds of coaching conversations might matter most in that context. And then, to kind of wrap up here, assessment for learning is a critical part of the overall puzzle. Every learning experience at Brooklyn Lab is tagged both against an academic standard, but also against the kind of XQ learner objectives that I mentioned above. So you can kind of tag somebody's ability to listen well on a team, as well as their ability to kind of generate an argument that's supported by textual evidence in the same experience. Great.